When you watch like an Olympic relay race, there's this expectation of just absolute seamless perfection.
Oh, yeah, completely.
You've got these two runners sprinting at top speed, and for a split second, they both have to hold the baton before the first runner lets go. I
Mhm.
mean, if they miss that pass, the race is over.
Right, and everyone knows exactly where the lines are drawn on the track, you know? You practice that handoff 1,000 times because, well, the margin for error is essentially zero.
Exactly. But then you step into the world of international immigration, and suddenly you're running a relay race across continents. You're passing this baton of paperwork between time zones.
Yeah, and instead of a clear track, you're looking at a bureaucratic landscape that requires just incredible precision to navigate.
It really is. So today, for you listening, we're doing a deep dive into a very specific, incredibly high-stakes bureaucratic journey. We're talking about the complete German spouse visa process for Indians.
And our mission today isn't just to read a list of requirements at you. I mean, anyone can pull up a government website and stare at a checklist.
Right? Nobody needs us for that.
Exactly. What we're doing is synthesizing the official guidelines with actual on the ground survival strategies. We're decoding the entire timeline from the very first piece of paper you sign in India to actually landing, registering, and, building a life in Germany.
Because to win this particular relay race, both the spouse in India and the spouse in Germany have to pass the baton flawlessly. So let's get right into the foundational layer of all this.
Sounds good.
Before you can even think about packing a bag or booking a flight, you have to understand exactly what kind of permission you're asking the German government for.
Yeah, and this is where a lot of people stumble right out of the starting blocks, honestly. We're talking about a national visa, category D.
Category D.
Yeah, this is not it's not a Schengen tourist visa where you just pop over for 90 days to see the sights.
Mhm.
The category D visa is specifically designed for long-term stays. It's
Yeah.
usually valid for at least 1 year.
And crucially, once you arrive in Germany on this Category D visa,
Mm.
it doesn't just permanently cover you forever, right?
No, not at all.
You have to actively apply for a residence permit within 3 months of arriving. It's basically your ticket into the country so you can legally ask to stay longer.
Exactly. And, you need to brace yourself for the timeline right up front. The processing takes 3 to 6 months.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, you apply via the German embassy in New Delhi or the consulates in Mumbai, Chennai, or Kolkata, depending on where your current jurisdiction falls.
So setting up that foundational paperwork, it requires absolute exactness.
Mm.
You're dealing with the Videx application form, which is the German Foreign Office's electronic visa application software.
Right.
You log into Videx, fill it out online, and then you have to print it out twice. And this is key. It has to be hand-signed. You can't just slap a digital signature on it.
No digital signatures. Yeah, they are very strict about that. You also need 2 biometric Schengen standard photos that are strictly less than 6 months old.
Along with specific declarations like the additional contact and additional questionnaire forms.
Plus, you have to definitively prove your residence in India. The embassy needs to establish your footprint, basically.
So what does that look like?
Well, this could be an Aadhaar card, a voter ID, or a ration card. But if you use a ration card, it must cover at least 4 years of history.
Okay, but here is where we hit our first major hidden roadblock, a detail that can absolutely tank your application before it even begins. I'm talking about the passport trap.
Oh, the passport track. Yeah, the passport rules are famously rigid.
Yeah.
At a baseline, your passport must have been issued within the last 10 years, and it must have at least 2 blank pages.
Which seems standard, but people miss it.
All the time. People so often just glance at the expiry date, but the embassy looks at the issue date. If you've had it for 9.5 years, you're already walking on really thin ice.
But that's just the baseline.
Yeah.
The real strategic move here, and this is vital advice if you're listening and about to start this process, if you are applying for a spouse visa, you should absolutely apply for a fresh passport to add your spouse's name prior to starting the visa application.
Yes. I mean, it sounds like an unnecessary extra bureaucratic hurdle when you already hold a perfectly valid passport, right?
Totally.
But skipping this step can trigger a massive headache and severe financial penalties.
It's entirely like failing a two-factor authentication check in a banking app.
Yeah.
The German bureaucratic software is just highly rigid.
Very.
If the exact string of characters on your newly issued marriage certificate doesn't perfectly match the string of characters defining your identity on your passport, the system automatically flags you.
And that flag is expensive. If your names and marital status don't align perfectly across your core identity documents, it can lead to the outright cancellation of your visa application.
Ouch.
But even worse, it can trigger a steep €500 embassy investigation cost.
Wait, 500 euros?
Yeah, the embassy literally charges you a manual override fee to investigate the discrepancy and verify who you actually are.
500 euros just because you thought your old passport was, like, good enough for the application. That is wild.
It is.
But you can completely bypass that entire nightmare by simply getting a fresh passport with your spouse's name updated before you even log into the Videx system.
Precisely. I mean, it saves you money, it saves you months of processing delays, and honestly, it saves you a tremendous amount of anxiety. You want your identity documents to present a unified, unquestionable front.
Okay, so your identity is locked down and the passport mismatch trap has been bypassed. But establishing who you are is only half the battle.
Right.
Once the embassy knows exactly who you are, their next immediate questions are basically, is this marriage genuine? And who is paying for you?
They need absolute certainty on those two fronts. The German state is essentially making sure that the incoming spouse won't be a burden on public funds.
Yeah.
And of course, that the relationship isn't just some transactional arrangement just to secure a European visa.
Right. So let's break down proving the marriage first. The documentation requirements shift depending on the type of ceremony, which makes sense given India's diversity. There are specific guidelines for an Islamic nikahnaमा, a civil marriage registered under the Special Marriage Act, Section 13, or, a Christian church certificate.
But we really need to drill down into Hindu marriages because the requirements here are incredibly specific and they often catch applicants completely off guard.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So you obviously need the formal marriage certificate, and you need photographic proof of the vital rituals, things like the feras or the saptapadi around the fire.
Yes. But the truly fascinating detail here is that along with the certificate and the photos, you have to submit a letter from the pandit.
The priest who actually officiated the ceremony, yeah.
Exactly.
But it goes even deeper than just a signed letter. The critical mandatory detail is that the pandit's Aadhaar card must be included in the documents you submit to the embassy.
Wait, so you have to track down the priest who married you and ask him for a copy of his government-issued ID?
You do, yeah.
That is wild.
But if we look at the underlying mechanics of why they ask for this, it makes perfect sense. The German authorities in cities like Cologne or Berlin are trying to verify religious events that happened thousands of miles away.
In an entirely different cultural context.
Exactly. The pandit's Aadhaar card provides a verifiable state-issued identity to the person who officiated the ritual. It grounds a religious, spiritual ceremony in a trackable legal reality for the German state.
Okay, that is brilliant when you think about it from an auditor's perspective. So,
Yeah.
Note to listeners, stay on extremely good terms with your pandit.
Highly recommended.
And structurally, for all of these documents, whether it's the pandit's letter or the marriage certificate, if they aren't originally in English or German, they need a notarized English translation.
Right.
You need the original document plus 2 A4 copies, and you must never, ever staple them.
Yeah, stapling physically ruins the automated scanning process at the consulate. It's a tiny mechanical detail, but if they have to manually unstaple your packet, you're already frustrating the person processing your life-changing application.
Yeah. Not a good way to start. So we've proved the marriage is real.
Yeah.
How do we tackle the financial safety net? Like, how do you prove to the German government that you won't go broke?
Well, there are 3 distinct pathways to prove financial stability. The first is the standard route. This is the most straightforward one.
Right.
If the spouse already living in Germany has a solid salaried job, they simply provide their employment contract, their last 3 months of pay slips, their local registration certificate, and their current residence permit.
Clean and simple. But what if the spouse in Germany is a master's student? Or what if they literally just started their job 3 weeks ago and cannot physically produce 3 months of pay slips?
That leads to the second option, the declaration of commitment, or Verpflichtungserklärung in German.
Wow, what a word.
I know, right? This is a formal letter of obligation. A third party currently living in Germany, this could be a relative, a close friend, or even an employer, steps up and legally assumes all financial liability for the incoming spouse.
So you're asking a third party to essentially underwrite your entire life in Germany. That is a massive ask.
It is an enormous responsibility. I mean, this isn't just a friendly character reference. The mechanism here is strict liability.
Why?
If the incoming spouse accrues public debts, uses unauthorized social funds, or, even requires a state-funded deportation, the person who signed that letter gets the bill.
That is terrifying.
Because of that severity, it must be executed in person at the local immigration office in Germany. They check the guarantor's creditworthiness right there on the spot.
Okay, and what about the third option? I know there is the blocked account, the sperkonto, but isn't that exclusively a mechanism used by international students?
It's universally known as a student tool, yes. But the way it's adapted for spouses is actually incredibly clever.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for a spouse visa, it's totally optional, but highly recommended if the spouse in Germany is a freelancer or has an irregular income.
How does the mechanism actually work for a spouse, though? Like, practically?
It functions exactly like a financial drip feed. You deposit a required sum, usually a year's worth of minimum living expenses, into this specialized German bank account.
Okay.
The account is blocked, meaning you cannot withdraw the lump sum. It only releases a fixed, predetermined amount to you every single month.
Oh, I see.
By using this, a freelance spouse definitively proves to the German state that no matter what happens to their freelance contracts, the incoming partner has guaranteed monthly liquidity and will not need state welfare.
That makes perfect sense. It removes all the risk for the government. Okay, so identity is locked, marriage is proven, finances are secured. You would think you're ready to fly.
You would think.
But there is one more major hurdle before you get that visa, and it's the one that causes the most delays.
Sprechen Sie Deutsch.
Exactly. The strict requirement for an A1 level German proficiency certificate.
Yeah, you absolutely need a certificate from a specifically recognized institution.
Yeah.
Usually the Goethe Institutes start Deutsch 1, Telc, or USD.
Now, I have to push back on this requirement for a second.
Okay, go ahead.
If I am moving to a massive global financial hub like Frankfurt, or a tech hub like Berlin, where business is entirely conducted in English, why is an A1 German certificate so strictly enforced? It feels like an arbitrary roadblock for highly skilled international couples.
It's a very common frustration, honestly.
Hmm.
But we have to look at the deeper philosophy of German immigration law. This language requirement is not about workplace integration.
It's not.
No. It's legally enshrined in the German Residence Act, and its core mechanism is everyday survival and preventing the profound isolation of the newly arrived spouse.
Preventing isolation. How does basic grammar do that?
Think about the daily reality. The working spouse goes off to the corporate office or the university all day where everyone speaks English.
Right.
The dependent spouse is left behind to navigate the neighborhood. They have to deal with the local grocery store, cashier, read signs at the pharmacy, understand announcements on the public transit system, or just say hello to a neighbor in the stairwell.
Yeah, I guess it can be pretty daunting.
A1 is not fluency. It's basic introductions, numbers, and simple sentences. It is the absolute minimum toolkit required so that a person doesn't feel entirely trapped and voiceless in their own neighborhood.
Okay, when you frame it as a psychological safety net rather than a corporate requirement, the logic really tracks.
Yeah.
But practically speaking, failing to secure this certificate is a logistical nightmare. Missing it can cause a massive 5-month delay in processing. And the exam itself is an investment. It costs around 5,000 to 6,500 Indian rupees at the Goethe Institute.
Which is exactly why the strategy is to start studying for this immediately, parallel to gathering your other documents. It generally takes about 2 to 3 months of consistent study to achieve A1.
Are there any exceptions to this rule?
There are a few rare exceptions, such as documented physical or mental impairments that prevent language learning, or highly specialized professional cases, but the baseline assumption should always be that you have to sit for the test.
All right, so you passed your A1, you've submitted the flawless paperwork, and your visa is finally approved.
Congratulations.
Now we enter the final pre-flight phase, the handoff. Both spouses now have parallel, urgent tasks to complete before the flight actually takes off. Let's start with the spouse in India.
So they need to book an appointment with VFS. VFS Global is the external agency that handles the physical document intake and biometrics for the embassy. You physically hand over your passport to them.
Right.
You also need to purchase travel. Health insurance providers like Bajaj are often used for a duration of 3 to 6 months.
And there is a critical timeline hack here. You have to keep a 21-day buffer between your VFS appointment and your actual flight.
Yes, do not cut this close.
Don't book your flight for 3 days after you hand in your passport, because the physical transit and stamping of the passport takes weeks. Furthermore, the actual validity dates stamped on your visa will be tied directly to the duration of the travel insurance you purchased.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the spouse, currently in Germany, is running their leg of the relay. They have to get the Indian marriage certificate officially translated into German.
Which you should absolutely do inside Germany, correct?
Highly recommended. Using a sworn translator in Germany costs about 50 to 60 euros and takes roughly 10 days.
Okay.
It's essential to have this done locally because the local city registration office heavily prefers documents translated by someone in the German legal system. The spouse in Germany also needs to secure the Wohnungsgeberbestätigung.
The landlord confirmation letter.
Exactly. It's a formal written declaration from your landlord confirming that your spouse is legally allowed to move into the specific apartment.
Now, there's another major task for the spouse in Germany. They need to add their incoming partner to their public health insurance plan, like TK, which stands for Techniker Krankenkasse, one of the major state health insurers.
Right.
But wait, if the spouse in Germany gets an official letter from TK stating the partner is insured, technically, they don't legally need to buy that separate travel insurance for the VFS appointment. So why spend the extra money on Bajaj travel insurance?
Okay, this is a perfect example of legal technicality versus real-world risk. Yes, VFS might accept the TK letter as proof of insurance, but the mechanism of German public health insurance is strictly territorial.
Meaning?
Your TK coverage only kicks in the precise moment your foot touches German soil.
Ah, so there is a coverage gap.
A massive one. If a medical emergency happens during the flight, or if you collapse during a layover in a transit country like the UAE or Turkey, you are entirely uninsured.
Oh, wow.
You would be personally, financially liable for international medical bills. Buying the travel insurance is a crucial safety net for the physical journey itself.
Okay, protect the transit window. That makes total sense. All right, the flight lands safely. Welcome to Germany. But the bureaucratic race is not over yet. The first few days require a very specific sequential sprint of administrative errands.
Day 1. Get a local SIM card. You just need your passport for this, but having a German phone number unlocks the rest of the bureaucracy. The very next step is city registration at the Rathaus or the Einwohnermeldamt.
This is where that landlord's letter, the Wohnungsgeberbestätigung, comes into play. And this city registration is truly the keystone of your entire existence in Germany.
Without it, you are locked out of the system. Completing this registration triggers an automatic cascade. It prompts the federal tax office to generate your tax ID, which will arrive by post.
Nice.
Most importantly, the office physically hands you your Meldebestätigung, your registration certificate.
And the moment you have that paper, you send a copy directly to your health insurance company, like TK, to finalize your permanent coverage.
Yep.
But there is one more crucial errand to run, and it's a financial optimization trick involving your taxes.
Right. So, by default, the moment you register at the Rathaus as a married couple, the German tax system places you both in tax class 4.
Okay.
The mechanism behind class 4 assumes that both spouses are earning roughly the exact same amount of money, so it taxes you equally.
But if one spouse is working full-time and the newly arrived spouse is still looking for a job, that default tax class is highly inefficient.
Highly inefficient. You are paying way too much tax up front. So you need to visit the Finanzamt, the tax office, to actively change your tax classes.
And what do you change them to?
The working spouse shifts to tax class 3, and the non-working spouse takes class V. Mechanically, this dramatically lowers the income tax deducted from the single working salary.
Oh, that's great.
It puts significantly more net income into your bank account at the end of the month, which is exactly when you need cash to furnish an apartment and settle in.
It's a brilliant proactive step.
Mm-hmm.
So you're registered, you're insured, and your taxes are optimized. Now, what do you actually do all day?
Right, time to live.
The final step is transitioning from surviving the bureaucracy to actively thriving in the economy. Let's talk about the job hunt.
Okay. When you look at the physical visa stamped in the passport, it will explicitly say Erwerbstätigkeit erlaubt, which means you are fully eligible to work. You're not restricted to just being a dependent.
That's a huge relief.
So the absolute first move is to register as a job seeker on the Agentur für Arbeit website, which is the federal employment agency.
And there is an incredibly clever bureaucratic hack regarding your residence permit here. We noted earlier that you have to apply for your residence permit within 3 months of arriving. But wait to do it. Do not apply the second you land.
It is a fantastic strategic delay. If you apply immediately as a dependent spouse, the immigration office charges you a €100 processing fee for a dependent residence permit.
Right.
But if you use your first 2 months to actively interview and you secure a job contract, you then have to apply for a work-based residence permit.
And they will charge you another €100 for the new permit.
Exactly. The mechanism doesn't allow for free upgrades. So, wait, use the 3-month buffer on your entry visa, focus aggressively on the job hunt.
And then,
Once you secure the employment contract, apply for the residence permit just once based on your new job and save yourself the time and the duplicate €100 fee.
I love that. And once you do get hired, you just ask your health insurance provider for your social insurance number, your Sozialversicherungsnummer, hand it to your new HR department, and you're officially in the German workforce.
But what if you aren't ready to enter the workforce because your German language skills stopped at A1? We have to talk about language progression.
Right, because A1 gets you through the grocery store checkout, but it doesn't get you through a corporate meeting.
Definitely not.
There are two different pathways here, depending on your current proficiency.
If your proficiency is still below B1, the visa officers at the immigration office have the authority to assign you to an integration course run by BAM, which is the Federal Office for Migration and Refugees.
And this isn't just sitting in a room doing grammar exercises, is it?
Far from it. They test your current level, assign you to an appropriate class, and these classes actively teach German culture, history, and the legal system alongside the language.
Wow.
The entire course culminates in the Leben in Deutschland test, which literally translates to life in Germany.
And financially, it's quite accessible. It is entirely free for students.
Yep.
For spouses of working professionals or blue card holders, you pay a partial fee per module. But the beautiful part is that half of that fee is refunded to you by the government upon passing the final test.
It is a direct financial incentive to integrate.
Now, what if you are already above a B1 level? Say you studied German extensively in India, but you need highly specific business-level fluency to work as an engineer or an HR manager.
In that case, you bypass BAMF entirely. You go back to the Agenter für Arbeit, the employment agency.
Okay.
You explain that a higher, specialized level of German is the only thing standing between you and your specific profession. They can assess your profile and actually mail you a voucher to enroll in a private language school, fully funding the bridge to your professional integration.
The state actively invests in getting your skills up to speed so you can start paying taxes.
Oh.
It is a remarkably thorough system. We have covered a massive amount of ground today. From utilizing the fresh passport strategy to dodge the €500 mismatch fee and tracking down the Pandit's Aadhaar card to authenticate your marriage.
It's a lot to keep track of.
We've navigated the A1 German isolation prevention hurdle, executed the €100 residence permit delay hack, and mechanically optimized your monthly net income through tax class 3.
It is an epic journey. It requires patience, precision, and an immense amount of resilience from both partners.
It truly does. But for you listening, as you stare down this mountain of paperwork, drowning in acronyms from Videx to BAMF, it is crucial to remember that all of this is just scaffolding.
Yeah.
You are carefully constructing the administrative scaffolding required to support the life you and your partner are going to share together in a new country.
It's a foundational effort for a shared future. And I'd like to leave you with a final thought to ponder.
Please do.
Consider how this highly structured, rigorous, process-mandating language classes, enforcing cultural integration tests, and legally demanding financial security doesn't just exist to process paperwork.
Right.
It actively architects the fabric of German society. It takes temporary arrivals and systematically provides them with the tools, the language, the civic knowledge, the tax structures to become permanent, fully integrated members of the community. What does it say about a country when its bureaucracy intentionally doubles as a cultural classroom?
That is a profound way to look at it. The obstacle course is actually a carefully designed training ground.
Exactly.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive for today. Good luck with the paperwork, and we'll catch you on the next one.